Okay. So do you want to I don't know. Do you need to go to the restroom and take any kind of a break, or should we just jump right in?
I think we're ready. Just the
Cool.
one thing that I'd want to know is I didn't actually put these in any kind of like numerical order other than just
Okay.
listing like, okay, here's number one, number two, number three. So there's no
That
like,
yes, that would actually help a lot because I obviously didn't do much preparation at all.
oh, there you go.
Um,
Okay.
so I agree. That's good. I like it
That
like
is
that.
all the prep work I did. I intentionally handicapped myself.
Nice. Um, I
Not that you're
feel it.
not worth my best.
No, dude, you've already uh given so much, so much. That bite size was fantastic.
Thank you.
And D&D, why can't I think of it? Was just
Oh,
so
yeah.
much fun too.
That was really fun. Yeah. Now that I actually know and I'm not completely dumb, now I can actually play the game.
Yeah, oh man, yeah, I just felt so stupid. Like I'm not getting this at all. I don't know what's going on. Like it was a really cool concept. It was a cool adventure. I just
Mhm.
felt like an idiot. Like there's this
Same.
puzzle and I'm just totally missing it. Like what is going on? And then Nate had to save us
Oh,
out of
yeah.
character because his character's an idiot.
He was the true hero of
Which
that
I
game.
love. Right, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Which makes sense because he's actually played it before, but
Mhm.
um
I'm
yeah.
just looking at my character sheet. I'm like, what do I click on?
Yeah.
Wait, there's links here?
Yeah. Well, I also thought it was funny. Well, that was really loud. Because he was like, all you have to do just read over your character sheets beforehand. I was like, yeah,
Right.
totally read it. I read all of it. I know it all. I skimmed it. I
Exactly.
got a little bit there, but I didn't
It
actually
was
read
proper noun after proper noun after proper noun. I'm
it.
like, yep, I
I
remember
don't
this in college.
I don't know what this means. Um, burning hands.
My hands are on
Uh,
fire. Clearly, that's obvious.
yeah, I was more concerned with just like, how do you play a halfling? I want to be that character, or
There you
like
go.
this is how I'm gonna play him. I don't know what he does. This is just his characterization.
I
Um,
mean, clearly you
anyways,
charmed the doctor.
you're right. Oh,
That's
that
got to
was
be
so
a running
funny.
gag, though. That's got to
That
be a
was
running gag
so
when we actually
funny.
start. That you were basically like the lady killer, but you don't even know it.
But like Cyrus, except more ambiguously gay. I thought that part was funny too,
That was pretty good. Yeah.
because it wasn't unintentional on my part. I was intentionally being aloof, but it
Mhm.
was unintentionally like, oh, he's a man. uh
But I'm so glad that Paul he's so good at this that he jumped on that. Like he knew
right.
what to do.
Yes. Yes. Oh man. Good times.
All right.
Okay. All right. So after that wonderful word from our friends, whom I'm sure you haven't heard in a long time,
So,
we're gonna go ahead and jump in talking about the best bosses of all time, or at least in our recent memory, our estimation. So we've got some our own top 10 lists. As I mentioned, I'm sure Nate will kind of chime in here later. But we, just wanted to talk about bosses because bosses are a good time, right? There's some games it just feels good to take down a boss,
mhm.
doesn't it? Do you agree?
I would
Um,
definitely agree. Sometimes it's awful to take down a boss.
mhm.
Sometimes I'm not exactly looking forward to it because I don't really feel like dedicating the next 2 to 3 hours of my life to this specific boss.
That's
Looking at
true.
you, final boss of Persona 5 Royal, as fun as that was, that is not
Oh,
on the list. It was a fantastic boss fight,
oh,
and it took me forever. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. That's about all I'm going
interesting.
to say about that.
Were there more forms to the final boss of Persona 5 than there were to the I can't even Shino, right? Was that his name? Shido? Shido.
Cheeto.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Cuz the and that cup had like 3 or 4 versions, didn't it? Anyways, doesn't matter. All I'm saying is that bosses help to give to test you. I would say like the best versions of bosses test what you have learned up to that point, and then in addition, it just feels great to finally like overcome a challenge like that, where you've run the gauntlet to get up to him, and then finally there's this thing that comes up, and we'll talk about it more as we kind of jump into, because in our little bit of discussion beforehand, yes, there are a lot of final bosses on our lists, but they're not all final bosses. There are some bosses that come mid game, or in my case, I've got one that's even sort of early on in the game, where they challenge you, and there are reasons there. So let's go ahead and just jump in. We'll do some best bosses, and then just for fun, we'll throw out some worst bosses as well. We did try to whittle it down to our top 10, although neither of us have really put it in any kind of order of like, this is definitely number one, the best boss ever. Although I would say there is one that we'll talk about that made both of our lists. It's probably pretty high on there. But regardless, let's go ahead and jump in. If you don't mind, I'm going to start just because this will be kind of not a throwaway, just that we've talked about it on this podcast before and fairly recently, so I don't have to go into much detail. And that is from Bloodborne, because of course there's Dark Souls games, Soulsborne games that I'm going to talk about, because those games have like big bad bosses that you have to take down. And I did talk about it on our Bloodborne episode, but Father Gascoigne stands out to me, just because he's the first like real challenge. And don't get me wrong, the previous boss that you fight, the cleric demon, I think is his name. He's not easy by any means, but Father Gascoigne really challenges you, and he's just a creepy character. At that point in the game, he's actually a very tragic character when it comes to the story, and I think he's fantastic. He's kind of, I did also put on here Ludwig, who comes in on the DLC. He's also a fantastic boss for other reasons. Just the visuals and the two forms that he has, he really challenges you as well. But I do have to hand it to Father Gascoigne. Now, Wes, I know you started Bloodborne. Did you ever face Father Gascoigne?
I was about to say the worst boss battle in that game is obviously the villagers that are like right outside like the first room that you go to, because they have kicked my butt every single time I've even tried that game.
Gotcha.
And no amount of running can escape from them. These villagers are obviously OP.
Gotcha. Did
So
you
no,
ever see the one dude that's in like huge armor? He's like a big round guy with a huge axe.
I remember an axe and I remember a big armored guy.
Okay.
And obviously I stayed far away from them too. I'm pretty sure they're right at the beginning of the game, aren't they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like next to a big gate if you like turn and like
Yes.
break down some stuff.
I think I
That
killed one of them. That was
nice. Okay.
probably like the biggest accomplishment I've ever done in gaming, and I figured like that's when I need to put the game down.
Yeah. That makes sense, cuz he can hit you for like half your health.
Mhm.
He's pretty intense. I've died to him a number of times. He's one of the types of enemies that's like, "Oh, he shouldn't be too hard," and then you underestimate him and he kicks your butt. And then you have to go back, and then you're nervous because you want to get your souls or blood echoes or whatever. And sometimes you do, and sometimes you lose them because you're dumb. That's me, because I'm dumb. Okay, so that's my that's one of mine. What do you have for us, Wes? What are some of your
Okay.
favorite bosses?
Well, starting off, I'll say I'll start off with one of my more throwaway bosses, and
Okay.
that's from a little game. People expect this from me, called Portal. Now, have you ever played Portal 2?
I haven't played the second one. I've played the first one, so I
Okay.
know GLaDOS. I know how weird and creepy she is.
hmm Well, the main boss of Portal 2, and I might have to spoil just a slight bit,
That's
is
fine.
actually not GLaDOS.
Okay.
GLaDOS eventually becomes a potato. Just, throwing some
Huh,
no context spoilers there a little
nice.
bit. There's a
Not
potato
a
involved
cake,
here.
but a potato.
And the final boss is actually a robot. I'm just going to spoil it because it's been out
Okay.
so many years. Come on,
Yeah.
people.
Yeah,
You
that's
should have
fine.
played Portal 2 when it was like popular. But the final boss is actually a like robot character named Wheatley. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with British comedians at all, but Wheatley is actually voiced by Stephen Merchant. Stephen Merchant, he's got this very like specific style of comedy. He's a comedian,
Hmm.
and the way he voices character throughout the entire game, he's like this ever present voice just looming around you, and it's
Okay.
his sense of comedy is just so good, like his deadpan humor and everything. And he eventually becomes the final boss that you have to fight against. So he's like joking the entire time that you're fighting him, and it really sets off this really interesting like dissonance between like how serious GLaDOS was in the first game and how like not serious this character is, but he becomes serious when he gains all these crazy like GLaDOS like powers. And eventually,
Interesting.
like the only way that you can beat him is when you, well, I'm not going to spoil it, but you send him somewhere, and it's very cathartic when you send him somewhere.
Okay.
I haven't really thought about Portal 2 a lot in the last couple of years, but I really want to go back and play it just because it was such a fantastic game, like mechanically, and they test
Hmm.
you on all of the different powers of the portal gun that you have, as well as all the different gels and everything that you need to use in order to accomplish certain tasks. So it just mechanically, it just felt like such a win.
Hmm.
Like you really have to try hard, and so it's like not as mechanical as Bloodborne, I'm sure, but for babies like me, we got to whet our appetites with just simple first person shooters. So I'm gonna say that's one of my favorite ones, honestly, and I'd go back and play that in a second.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I haven't played Portal 2, but even the first Portal, it definitely like bends your brain
Mm-hmm.
in a different way. And I've heard 2 is even better than the first one. It's funny. The thing is I binged the first Portal because it's only a few hours long, like
Yeah,
3
it's
or
really
4
not long at
hours.
all.
And after beating it, I looked at Portal 2 and it was like, I think How Long to Beat had it at like 11 or 12 hours. And so I was like, I'm not really feeling a longer version of this because I just played this and I just hadn't gone back to it. I'm pretty sure I own it. I might not. But it's like constantly on sale. So if I wanted
Oh
to play
yeah,
it, I could. Um, but
but
yeah, it's definitely on my list of games that I need to play because I did really enjoy Portal.
mhm,
I haven't done Portal 2. Stephen Merchant, I know of him. I just
mhm.
can't think of anything like that. I would not be able to identify his voice. I've seen there was a show called An Idiot Abroad that was really
Mhm.
funny. Where he like has this banter with other characters in the show, but like I nothing like particularly stuck out to me
Mhm.
about him. So I'd have to play the game to kind of get the
Yeah.
feel. But
The
sweet.
only film credit I know him from is from it's bizarre, Nomeo and Juliet. And if you never watched Nomeo and
Okay.
Juliet, it's actually hilarious, and he is one of the
Okay.
gnomes there. And and I was like, wow,
Interest.
this is actually genuinely funny. Like I haven't seen any of the sequels, but Nomeo and Juliet, if you like your Shakespeare knockoffs, that one's
Hmm.
actually pretty funny. And he's one of the gnomes there, and he's just it's the same voice. He does the same voice for all his characters, and it works every time because it's just so like boom, deadpan.
Okay, nice, nice. When you said Romeo and Juliet, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've seen that on Redbox because they always have those like weird, like
Yes.
super low quality
Hmm.
knockoffs. But it sounds like this is much better than that. So, uh, yeah, I'll have to check it out.
It's a
Tell my
good
kids
kids
about it.
movie.
Definitely enjoy that. Okay, so well, these aren't really numbered. So this one would be kind of lower on the list, and the reason is because I don't know if it's nostalgia or if it's one of those things that's like you had to be there. But this dude makes my list because it made a just narratively this early on in video games. Uh, this is Garland and or Chaos from the original Final Fantasy on NES.
Oh,
So
okay.
I grew up playing this game. Like we had the cartridge, we didn't have the map, but we had like the 40-page like manual for the game. And if you haven't played the first Final Fantasy, it feels epic when you're 9 years old, when you're 12 years old, because it felt really long. You go on this huge quest. Again, what feels like I think it's like a 15, 20 hour game now. I could be totally wrong. I don't know. I haven't played it in so long. But anyways, the game starts out. It kind of makes dig at Dragon Quest by like you save the princess. Like that's the first thing that you do in the first like hour of the game. You take down this knight who's gone rogue. His name is Garland. You take him down. You get the princess back, and then your real adventure begins. Long story short, at the end of the game, there's these weird time travel shenanigans that are going on, and this character, Chaos, has been creating this time loop. And so you have to beat him. Well, it comes out that Chaos is actually Garland. Like, actually, after you defeated Garland, exactly, but he basically like sells his soul to the devil or something like that and becomes chaos and creates like he learns how to time travel and then he creates this time loop so that he can become more powerful. And just the way that it went from like it took it back all the way from the beginning of the game, and now that character that you had beaten has become like this huge menace who's like about to destroy the world. I just thought that was super. He also looks awesome for like
Mhm.
original NES 8-bit graphics. If you look at Chaos, I mean, even Garland looks pretty cool, but Chaos looks really cool too. So it might just be nostalgia,
Mhm.
but I think he's super cool.
The real question is, did he knock you all down?
No, what?
Oh, well, that was a wasted joke. That's the first thing he says. He's like, "I, Garland, will knock you all
That's
down."
right. Oh
Man,
man,
I
sorry,
fell
it's been
flat on
so
my
long.
face there. Ah,
No, you were just expecting me to actually know the video game that I'm talking about, and that's right. Oh man,
Mhm.
good times.
Funny thing about that, I do have the novelization of Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3, and what they really try to do, it's a super short one though for number 1, it's like maybe like 50 pages long, and it's kind of a compendium of all 3 games. But it's really interesting how they like really try to characterize him as well as like how respected Garland was among like the soldiers there and everything, and
Okay.
how just
Yeah.
like tragic his character kind of seemed at that point. And I don't know, I felt like it was pretty good novelization, other than the fact that they try to use the most inane fantasy tropes and names and all that like
Gotcha.
actually named, like all 4 of the main characters are just named like these, just almost feels like randomized like name generators for fantasy stories. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I digress. So but no, I have never actually finished Final Fantasy 1. I need to get back to that someday.
Okay.
I got stuck in the dwarf village or something, and I could never go,
Uh,
I could never figure it out after that.
oh man, yeah, you give them the TNT and then they blow up the little the connection point there and then you can sail across and then there's a vampire attacking the city.
Oh well, there you go.
Memories of when I was young.
I have
Anyways.
a dreaded fear of vampires, so that's probably where I stopped.
Uh,
It's debilitating, let me tell you. So, okay, my next one.
yes.
Given the game you just mentioned, actually, that you're playing, this might be a slight spoiler,
Yeah.
but it's the Queen Metroid from Metroid
Okay.
2, actually. And I don't know if you
Okay.
know much about the original battle. Like, I played Metroid 2 a lot when I was younger. I borrowed it, and I was always terrible at it,
Okay.
obviously. And I played it with my cousins, and they were always better than me. So obviously that kind of fuels a hatred. But when I was going through that year that we were doing backlog golf, and I was just trying to knock down like as many games as humanly possible, I binged through all of Metroid 2 that I could. And
Okay.
honestly, it it was one of those experiences. It's like I don't think I'm ever going to replicate that experience. Like you mentioned, I am notoriously terrible at Metroidvania type games. I cannot find my way through a map like whatsoever. Like I have a horrible sense of direction when it comes to like these two-dimensional games. And
Okay.
that's one of the reasons why I can't play Hollow Knight. Like it's so hard for
Huh.
me.
Okay. Well, yeah, it is a hard game in general, but
hmm
okay.
Just the navigation part's the hard part for
Huh.
me.
Huh.
But feeling like the sense of accomplishment that I got to this boss battle at that point
Hmm.
is like, oh wow, I finally did it. This game that I remember when I was like maybe 4 years old trying to play on the old like brick Game Boy, finally it's coming to a head. And that's a hard battle too. Because
Okay.
this giant Queen Metroid, it's like it doesn't look like a normal Metroid. It looks like a giant alligator crocodile thing. And the only way that you can beat it is if you use like 150 missiles in order to
Oh
take it down.
my
So you need to be like
goodness.
fully stacked, or you have to like go into the morph ball form and then go inside of its mouth and bomb it from the inside a couple times.
Okay.
And they did something interesting with that boss actually, where there was like this little drop off point, like right underneath the boss. Because like if you were basically on the verge of dying, it actually allowed you to escape the boss battle and come back to it later. And
Huh.
it was a pain in the butt because you have to go to all these different platforms to get up there. But yeah, you could escape it at any time that you wanted to just go and like refill or get more health tanks or whatever that you needed. So I just thought it was a really great, like epic battle. It felt epic, and it was a Game Boy game. So that's one of the ones that I would definitely put on the list. And if you haven't
Wow.
played Metroid 2 yet, I don't know how it is in Samus Returns. I'm imagining
Mhm.
it's even better, even more grand and epic. But for the Game Boy, it was a fantastic battle.
Okay. Okay. See, I'm surprised that you talk about like not being able to navigate 2D games, and then you say that you got to the end of Metroid 2. Because that's
Right?
what I've heard about Metroid 2 is like it all looks the same,
Mm-hmm.
especially because it's on Game Boy. You don't have you get green and white. Um, so that's yeah,
It was
I'm
a
surprised.
war of attrition. Let me tell you, it
Green
was
and black.
it
Okay.
was a slog. It was hard.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's why
Okay.
I consider it
Okay.
one of my greatest gaming achievements.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You get the that feeling just washes over you. I
Mm-hmm.
beat you. That's awesome.
You
Uh,
did me and everybody else.
finally, so the next one on my list, and again, this is kind of like going. Well, there's a few things here. I feel like I have to uh, give a little bit of I don't know, a disclaimer, simply because this is one of my favorite games of all time. But it's Lavos from Chrono Trigger. Um, and so the thing is, I don't think the battle itself is like super difficult. I remember it being fairly easy the first time that I played it. Now I've beaten this game countless times. It's like dozens of times. So like not all the way through, but I've gotten through endings and you have to beat Lavos every time. So it's not that it's like the greatest accomplishment, but the fact that the whole game kind of leads up to you see this creature destroying the world multiple times. You're knocked back and forth to different times every time you try and fight it. That finally at the end of the game, you fight what you think is Lavos, and it's really just the shell. And then you go inside, and then you fight what you think is Lavos, and then that is also some sort of like a shell. It morphs into like the real kind of Lavos larva looking thing, along with its two other little drone looking dudes. And so just everything that had built up to getting to him and then finally fighting him and having these multiple forms and that last form it does do the whole like oh this drone you can only do physical damage and this drone can only take magic damage and this drone heals the main lava so you have to kind of like you have to juggle it again, not that it's like the hardest thing in the world because I have other bosses on here that are super hard, and Lavos is not one of him. And maybe it's just because I love this game so much. But finally taking him down and like having everything that had come up in the game up to that point, uh, and being able to destroy him was super cool. So Lavos from Chrono Trigger, final boss, makes my list.
Now, I really considered putting him on the list, and I would
Okay.
definitely agree. Like, he was, as bosses go, fairly easy. Like, I beat him my first time. Like, the first time I played it on the DS, that was, it was not a hard battle, especially compared to some of the other battles in that game. But I think what really like sets him apart is that he's just such a like grand villain. Like everything is building up to this character. He is almost like
Mhm.
mythological in the sense because you're going between time period and time period, and you're always hearing about him as he's like this ever-present evil that's
Yes.
influencing all of
Yes.
time. He's destroyed the world. He actually accomplished it in different time periods and everything. So like finally coming face to face with him and actually just giving him the smackdown and everything is like, look what I did. I just conquered this fantastic evil that's been ravaging all humanity throughout the entire timeline of human events and everything. I feel like it really just puts like an appropriate like grand stature for him. So even though he's fairly easy, like it's a good boss.
Yes. Oh man, yes. I'm glad. Okay, so it's not just nostalgia talking. It does
No,
actually feel that way. It's not just, yeah, 12-year-old Josh. It
yeah,
does. And but that's also why I don't like what they did in like Chrono Cross and how the characters from Chrono Trigger just kind of die off willy-nilly. Anyways, but I digress. That's not what we're
whoa,
talking about
spoilers.
today. Yeah.
I don't know. I've never played Chrono Cross.
I had never gotten to that point either, but I've had the game spoiled
Mhm.
because it is all kinds of ridiculousness.
That's
That
what I hear.
story is whack.
Mhm.
Anyways, yeah, who you got next?
My next one, I actually had to look up the name because I honestly
Okay.
couldn't remember the name. And this could be a big like nostalgia thing for me as
Hmm.
as well, because I don't think I beat this. I mean, I beat this game when it first came out, so it was something else at that point. And that would be the final boss of The World Ends with You. I guess the name is like Draco Conchus.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've played The World Ends with You.
Yes.
You
Hmm.
have. Okay.
Yep.
So if you remember, he's like this big, like giant dragon type character who's taken up both screens and everything. And my memories are
Yeah.
a little hazy because I haven't played it in a little while. But I remember that guy just being like absolutely like impossible for like
Yes.
so long.
Yes.
And it took me maybe like a week to get through the actual game itself, but it took me like weeks afterwards in order to like really start honing my skills and actually like getting better at the game and playing that stupid pin game that you have to play throughout
Oh
time
no.
to time and like actually getting like the good pins and everything and all the good powers and all that. And it was just this like astronomical feat to finally be able to just be like boom, basically down to like the very last bit of my HP, just one of those final grand hits, and finally ending up beating that game. And seeing the bonds that the main character has developed over the time and how he's changed as a person, like actually playing out in the gameplay. It's a really like magical experience. And now that we hear that there's a sequel coming out, basically, I'm like,
Hmm.
how are they going to recapture that feeling? Honestly, like, what are they going to do? It's going to be a really really high bar to hit for them on the sequel. But
Mm.
yeah, that was such a good game. And I feel like that's like one of the reasons why I got into like so many of these different like persona type games and everything, because that game was like
Uh-huh.
my gateway drug into like that Japanese cultural, like Shibuya, late 2000s
Yeah.
mindset. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was an interesting game with fantastic music, and just hearing all those themes playing. I want to play it again right now.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I remember. So I played most of that game because it had a dynamic like difficulty slider. That the more difficult you made the game,
Hmm.
you'd get more experience. I played most of the game on like pretty high difficulty
Hmm.
to gain more experience. I had to I had to lower that bad boy in order to finally beat
Exactly.
that boss. Because yeah, I remember just like coming up against him and I'm like, wait, what? Like nothing has prepared me for this.
No.
Um,
Oh man,
yeah,
you feel so something like that huge.
yeah, yeah. But you sound more dedicated. I don't remember exactly what I did. I don't remember if I grinded for a little while or what. Because I don't remember turning it like all the way down to easy, but I do remember definitely having to change it because there was no way I was going to beat him yeah, with a high amount of difficulty.
Oh
Um,
no.
but I also didn't play the pin game because it felt so random. Like I didn't know
Hmm.
what I was doing. But anyways, yeah, he was a good boss. I get it. I get it. Um this one's kind of a weird one. So this is not a final boss. This was actually an optional boss, although technically he is like the most difficult boss in the game. But I think that's kind of what makes him so cool. So, again, maybe nostalgia. I don't know. I don't care. In Super Mario RPG, you can unlock a special boss in one of the areas towards the end of the game that was a nod to Final Fantasy. And the boss is called Kulex. And he is this character that like it's almost kind of like a throwaway like he's like, I'm from another dimension and I'm trying to find like the best fighters or something, if I remember correctly. It's been so long since I played this game, but it's a totally different art style than the rest of the game. It looks like something straight out of Final Fantasy. It uses like different crystals to attack you, and it is the most difficult boss in the
Mhm.
game. And it's so cool because it feels so out of left field, but it's also like there to challenge you. Like if you want more from this game, there's this boss to take down. I don't think I ever actually beat the boss because
No.
I don't remember doing anything after fighting Smithy.
Mhm.
But the fact that he was there and hey, I really like Final Fantasy, I just thought was super cool. So I think he's definitely one of my favorite bosses, even if I haven't beaten him.
And I feel like the battle music that plays, I think it's one of the Final Fantasy battle themes, if I'm recalling it correctly.
Yeah, it has a different feel to. Yeah, I don't know how it's got to be some sort of like remix or something, but it definitely
Mhm.
feels very different than the rest of Super Mario
Right.
RPG, which is very light. It's very much, that it's a pretty easy game too. And this is just like, no, he's here to beat you down.
Mhm. Going along the same lines, though, we have to mention the Axum Rangers. The Axum Rangers were
Oh,
hilarious. All of their
yes.
joking that they did,
Oh, yeah.
and
Oh,
I was just
so
like,
good.
even back then, I was like, oh, those are the Power Rangers. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
this is so cool. Mario and Power Rangers together.
Oh,
Fanfic.
yeah.
But
Oh, that's so
they
true.
were pretty awful. They were pretty easy, but
Yeah, yeah, but that's what made him so funny. Because didn't they start bickering as you were beating
yeah,
him? Yeah. Oh man, that was fun.
that game had so much charm. I
Yes.
almost put Culex on mine as well, but it's just like
Okay.
again, yeah, I've never actually beaten him, and I got the floor wipe with me when I first started it, and I was like, this is awesome. I'm not doing this.
Right. Yeah.
Alrighty, my next game that I have to mention. This one is very near and dear to my heart as well,
Mhm.
and it's really hard, honestly, to choose one single boss from this game.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to kind of all lump them together. And
Okay.
that's
That's fine.
basically every boss for Mega Man 2. Every single one of them.
Okay. Okay.
I
Yeah.
loved all of the theming that they do in those different games and how they have all the different levels leading up to the boss of that level and how they went from, in the first game they had only 6 robot masters and it kind of felt a little bit more clumsily, haphazardly put together. But
Mhm.
Mega Man 2 like really tightened that up and made sure that you understood like, okay, you got to know this one's weakness or you're going to get floor wipe with you. Otherwise, just go get Metal Man's blades and you'll be able to take care of like 80% of everything. But how that all leads up to, there's this one part like where I have no idea when I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old. I have no idea how I got to this boss, but I remember playing the dragon with the disappearing blocks
Oh,
over and over and over again.
yeah.
And I'm just thinking to myself, was I some kind of like prodigy when I was 4 years old to be able to get to that part? I don't remember putting
What's
in
happening?
passwords. So I must have just been like freaking awesome at Mega Man 2 to be able to get to that point. And then finally, like years later, when I was actually like earning my way up to fighting Dr. Wily and trying to figure out like all the different weaknesses on him, and when he turns into an alien randomly and he's like flying around and everything, and the only thing that can actually hurt him is the stupid bubble power.
Yeah.
The stupid bubble power is the only thing that can take him down. And it's like just learning that and understanding like the weaknesses of these different characters. I love that so much. Like mechanically, it's really solid. And I guess for me, like final boss fights, it's all about the mechanics and everything. Can you really like put to
Yeah.
use everything that you've learned? And does this actually hold up with the rest of the game? So I don't know. Everything in Mega Man 2 is great. The dragon
Mhm.
is super memorable. It probably gave me nightmares as a kid,
He
but
is
I
rough, dude.
he
Yeah.
is. It's so hard. And the Yellow
Yeah.
Devil, I think, makes an appearance in that game as
Ugh.
well. And they're all very memorable. So
Mhm.
Mega Man 2, everyone, every
Nice.
single person.
That's a good one. I don't have any Mega Man bosses on my list, and it was simply because it's like often Mega Man bosses are easy after you know how to beat them. And so it's hard for like one to stick out in my mind, but that totally makes sense. Oh man, and even just you talking about like Wily becoming an alien, I remember that like blowing my mind of like, oh, he's an alien. That makes so much sense. And then like the lights turn on and it's just Dr. Wily, like,
It's just a hologram.
yeah, exactly.
And
Which was so funny because it's like I had just freaked out about it, but yeah.
I would be absolutely remiss though if I did not mention the fan song that came out in Japan and basically took Japan by storm, and that is the "I Can't Defeat Airman" song. I don't know if you've ever listened to that song. It is fantastic. It's called in Japanese it's Airman ga Tausanai, and that
Okay.
entire like boss thing, like with Airman and Woodman and how those powers coalesce and everything. Pretty sure those are Mega Man 2, right? I could be wrong. Pretty sure those are Mega Man 2.
I think so.
Pretty sure about them. Okay, yeah. There's this Japanese fan song that was made. It's like this indie band. They put it together. It's super awesome music video, and that's basically what launched their careers to becoming like super, awesome, good like musicians, indie musicians, I guess. I don't know. But if you have the chance, go and watch the original music video for "I Can't Defeat Airman," and I promise that song will get stuck in your head because it's that good.
Nice.
It's so good.
Ah, I'll have to check it out. That sounds awesome. Dang.
And it spawned a lot of spin-offs. So many spin-offs. Even Dragon Ball related ones where an actual Dragon Ball voice actor sang the song in character.
What?
Yeah.
Oh
I'll have
my
to share that with you later.
dang,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mega Man 2.
yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I've done a lot of nostalgia so far. So this is one that I mean, it's been a while since I've played it, maybe like 4 years or so. But this boss always stuck out to me. Again, not a final boss, but one. This is from Resident Evil 4. So Resident Evil 4 starts out. It eventually becomes kind of an action game, but it starts out really creepy. And there is one area where a lot of the enemies that you're fighting are carrying chainsaws. And the
Oh.
thing with these enemies is that they can one hit kill you if they get close. And you literally see them like chainsawing what's his name? Oh my goodness, why can't I think of his name? Um
Leon.
Leon. There you go. I was like, Lance? It's not Lance. What is it? Leon.
Lance, the
It's
main
not
character
Lance
of
the
Resident Evil
dog.
4.
And they'll like straight up chainsaw Leon's head off. That was so jarring and freaky the first time that I played it. So after you get through that area, it basically opens up to this arena where you fight two. They're called. I think they're just called the Chainsaw Sisters. And you fight two of them at the same time. So like while you're shooting one and keeping your distance from one of them, another one can sneak up behind you and chainsaw your head off. So the entire battle, you're like on your toes, and for me, like just freaked out, like super paranoid that another one is gonna come around and sneak up on you. And man, I just thought that that is one of my favorite bosses. Certainly, probably my favorite. That game has a lot of ridiculous bosses, but that one like freaked me out probably the most out of all of them in the game. And so that one, yeah, Chainsaw Sisters are one of my favorite bosses of all time.
Chainsaw Sisters sounds like a great name for like a metal band.
It does, does.
The thing about Resident Evil 4 is
Mhm.
that I bought the Wii version when I got to college,
Yes. Uh-huh.
and I thought I was being like super edgy, super cool. It's like, oh yeah, I got Resident Evil 4. Look at this. It's all bloody and da 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 da. There's the IGN logo on the Wii cover. It's great. Look that up if you don't know what that is. That's hilarious.
Is I think I know what that is. I thought that was with Okami.
Or maybe
Did
it
they
was
do that
Okami. I don't know.
with
It was a
Resident Evil
Capcom
4?
game.
Okay, yeah.
Whatever it is. But I remember bringing it back to my dorm room and I was like super excited to play. And then I'm like 10 minutes into the game and I get chainsawed. And I'm just like, nah, nah,
I'm
bro.
done.
This game's not for me. Nope. Put
Nice.
it away. Never played it again. I have it sitting on my PS4 sometime when I'm brave enough, but I don't think that day will ever come.
Yeah, well, a quick Google search, Wikipedia shows that they're actually called the Bella sisters,
Oh,
from when you get the little bottle cap that you can get of them. So my bad. That doesn't quite sound. It doesn't sound quite as metal,
no,
but
no. Chainsaw Sisters all the way.
there you go.
All right.
Awesome.
My next one, I'm actually going to combine two because they're from the
Okay.
same series, and
Cool.
I'm going to be throwing Micah a bone here because I also
Yeah.
quite enjoy this series, and that would be the Psycho Mantis fight from Metal Gear Solid One,
Yeah.
and the final boss of Metal Gear Solid Three. So Psycho
Okay.
Mantis, obviously, it might be even on your list. I don't know if you've played Metal Gear Solid One.
Yes.
You have? Okay.
Yes.
So
I have.
obviously both in the PlayStation version and the GameCube remake and everything, they got these really cool like fourth wall breaking moments
Hmm.
where it's like he reads all the data on your memory card for specific types of games and basically kind of like mind reading you. And you have to like put the controller in a different port and they really try to psych you out with some of the visual effects and everything. It's like when you can make a boss like so memorable and he's basically just like this kind of honestly, really and truly, like from the game, he's a pretty early on boss, and he's really like not as memorable as some of the other ones necessarily in terms of like the actual combat.
Right.
But like he's still a meme to this day. Everybody refers to
Yeah.
Psycho Mantis fight as being like one of the best things ever. And I was like, oh yeah, obviously. So he has to be on this list simply for posterity. But the
Nice.
one that I really wanted to touch on, unless you want to talk about Psycho Mantis first before I go to the next one.
Oh no, I was just I mean, I actually cut him from my list because I had too many, and that's simply because of my experience of him. I completely agree that he ought to be in a best boss list ever.
Mm-hmm.
I had already known what he does. It had been spoiled to me before I played Metal Gear Solid, so it didn't hit me quite as hard. It was still cool, but
Oh yeah.
it didn't freak me out. It was cool. It was like, oh, that's just such a cool thing. So I didn't experience it the way that it ought to be experienced, and I totally understand why it has as much. It's so memorable to anyone who's played the game, and I completely agree. He ought to be on the list. So
Oh,
I'm
definitely.
glad that he was on your list because I had to cut it. He was a runner up on mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did get to experience it like the way it was meant to be because my brothers had like bought a PlayStation home just randomly like someday. Like I didn't even know the PlayStation existed, and they just brought a PlayStation home, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. It takes discs, okay.
These discs,
Kind of
yeah.
reminds me of that Sega CD thing we got over there.
Oh.
That's kind of cool. And then like I watched them play like through all of Metal Gear Solid like on the PlayStation with those visuals and everything, and it was super memorable and probably not appropriate for me to be watching when I was like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years old. I don't know. But it was a really cool game. But the other one would be the final boss of Metal Gear Solid 3, known
Okay.
as the boss.
Hmm.
She's the boss. So not the big boss, but the boss. And the thing that I really liked about her, again, going back to those mechanics, it's like you have to take everything that you learned as Snake throughout this entire game, and you've gone through some really crazy bosses during
Okay.
Metal Gear Solid 3. They have some of the most wackiest, memorable bosses that you would even begin to imagine. And there's like multiple ways to beat some of them. And some of them you don't even necessarily have to face if you really understand some of the mechanics of the game. It's really interesting how they do
Interesting.
that. But like when you finally like are up to her, and you're basically just going like on a one-on-one brawl just between you and her. It's not like this necessarily like this big, giant robot fighting, the different Metal Gears and anything. It's like that's
Right.
the final boss to me, at least in my mind. And it's just like one-on-one brawl between her and the different ideals that they had, and slight spoilers, but like her betrayal to those ideas and him fighting back against that, but also knowing that Metal Gear Solid plot it doesn't make any sense necessarily at all. But like the betrayal that he feels, the trust that he had in this character and everything, and you're really seeing like this clash of ideals, which like going back to Persona 5 Royal, like they do something very similar at the end of that. And this is like I'm just a sucker for
Nice.
the like this is like one on one, just use your fists, man to man or man to woman, I guess, because the boss is a woman. But it's like, just one on one type of fight. Like that's the kind of thing that gets me. I don't know why, but that's the
Nice.
kind of thing, a big old Rocky type fight.
Yes. Yeah. There you go. That's cool. That's awesome. I have not yet played actually any of the Metal Gear Solid games outside of the first one.
Mm-hmm.
But I have heard that 3 is great. So and actually as I perused kind of other people's lists throughout the internet, she did show up. I didn't know it was a she. I just saw the boss. Um, so there you go.
She's a very tragic character too. It's great how they weave the
Oh,
the storyline around her. Metal Gear
nice.
Solid 2 is also good. I will
Hmm.
say that game is underrated.
Yeah. I need to play them. They're on
Mhm.
my game's a shame. Maybe next year. We'll see.
Some year.
Um, yeah, right. It will happen eventually. I own it. I've owned it for a while. Um, okay, so since you were throwing a bone to Micah, I'm going to throw a bone to Nate and bring up Shadow of the Colossus. So, I mean, obviously, it's a game about boss battles. That's really the only battles in the game are the bosses themselves. The ones that stick out to me, and I mean, we kind of talked about all of them when we had our episode on Shadow of the Colossus. The one that sticks out to me the most is the eel boss, simply because, and I talked about it, but because you're in the water, because it's dark, and then you see it kind of looming, and it starts glowing, and you see how huge it is, and oh, it just gets under my skin. That whole boss, I've talked about it, but the first time I played that game, I didn't actually finish it. I literally had to pause the game and set it down. My wife was in the room. I had to pause it and set it down and just kind of like recollect myself because it was freaking me out so much. There's just a thing about being in water and the way the cinematic nature of this game really made me feel like I was there and I had to take some time and then go back to it and I finally beat it. So that one sticks out to me. I do think similarly there is a bird boss. I think it's called Avian, or what people call it, and that it's similar because it's in a very similar kind of arena that's kind of dark, and it comes and swoops down at you, and that can get kind of freaky. But if you time it just right, you can grab on, and then there's this cool element where you're holding on for dear life when it starts dive bombing and going really fast, and then it slows down and you can run across and start stabbing it, and then it speeds up again and you have to hold on really tight, and it just feels really cool. So anyways, I just want to mention that one as well. I think the eel takes it for me, but the bird boss was super cool as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, I can definitely say that a lot. No, some of the boss battles in that game are really great and really memorable. I
Yeah.
have my own opinions on this though that I will mention later.
Gotcha. Yeah,
There's
I will say I saw on a lot of lists that the very last boss of this game was on a lot of best of lists, and don't exactly agree. Clearly, because I think the eel and the bird are better. So
We'll talk about this later.
that's all I'll say. What else you got?
All right. So I am actually going to mention a Zelda game now, and that is
Okay.
from the clear and the obvious best Zelda game that's ever been made, and that is Link's Awakening for the Game Boy.
Okay.
Obviously,
Okay.
the best Zelda game that they've ever made.
Mm, mm,
Amazing. And I'm going to
so good.
mention the final boss of that game because what I really enjoyed
Oh.
about that boss, it's called Nightmare. And,
Uh-huh.
given the themes of the game and all that with the windfish and the dreams and all that, everybody knows how this game ends. It was a dream the whole time,
Yep.
very Alice in Wonderlandy. But what they really did with that boss, I think, is not only did they have this boss morph into actual bosses from that specific game, but it
Mm-hmm.
morphed into bosses from other Zelda games,
Yeah.
specifically Link to the Past. And I guess timeline wise, this game is supposed to take place like directly after Link to the Past. So like
Yep.
calling the boss Nightmare and like recalling these nightmarish bosses that you had to fight before, that Link had to fight before in his timeline, basically throughout his life, bringing that up, when he was just a little kid, he had to fight these like crazy hard bosses and everything. Now he's a little more grown, but he still has like the trauma of fighting them.
Yeah.
I don't know,
PTSD.
lore wise, PTSD, there you go. Like it makes perfect sense that this character would morph into like these nightmarish versions of bosses he's fought before, like Aghanim and Ganon from Link to the Past. And
Yeah.
I think that's super clever. And that fight is also complete shenanigans because it's freaking impossible. It is
Hmm.
so hard. That boss is so ridiculous. But because of
uh,
the theming around it, I can forgive it for being a little bit insane.
yeah. Oh
But I remember
man.
going to revisit that like a couple years ago, and I was like, how? How did I ever beat this as a kid?
Uh,
It,
man.
I don't know.
I can hear the when you hit that boss because Link's Awakening is super nostalgic for me. It was my first Zelda game. I've beaten it so many times. Gotten stuck so many. Oh my goodness! Like I got stuck for like months. at multiple parts in that game. This was like pre-internet, kiddies. When you couldn't just like we had to ride our bikes to the library if we wanted to get on the internet and figure this stuff out. Regardless, yeah, just the sound that it makes, the kind of like uh, that sound effect. It sounds almost like an aggravated kind of like yell that it makes whenever you hit it. Mm. That was a good
Sound
last
design in
boss.
that game
That's
is
a good one.
amazing.
Yeah.
So good. Especially with how
Yeah.
they blended all the different instruments together. But
Yeah. Yeah. For that final song. Oh
that's why
man.
everybody should play Link's Awakening. It's fantastic. Better than
I
Breath of the Wild.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you did say it was the best one. Interesting,
Mhm.
huh? They're such different games. It's hard to even
They are,
compare,
yeah.
but
I know.
man, oh
I'm
man.
being facetious.
Well, clearly, I mean, it does have a hook shot, so it has to be. So,
Does it?
um, okay, what do I want to choose next out of these last four? Um, let's go ahead and go with well, let's do another nostalgia bomb, okay? Again, this might not be well, this one's actually pretty similar to Lavos. Maybe I should have just lumped him in with that. So, as most of you probably know, my favorite game of all time is a tie between Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger. And hence, the final boss of Final Fantasy VI, Kefka, makes this list for very similar reasons to Lavos. He is not a particularly difficult boss. Now, I grinded the crap out of the characters so that all my characters knew Ultima at the very end of the game, which is stupid. Don't do it, but I wanted to be prepared. And so it made the boss actually pretty easy for me the first time I fought it. And actually, I think I've only actually beaten the game once. Um, so Kefka, similar to Lavos, well, Lavos is just like this menace throughout the entire game. Kefka is a bumbling idiot at the start of Final Fantasy VI, and you see his rise to power and how power makes him like he's an idiot, but he goes absolutely insane when he gets power. And then there's this entire cult that comes around it. Like he destroys the world. He's the leader of this cult. You finally fight him and he's not well, you fought him earlier in the game as well and he looks like a clown literally. And then this final boss, he's like this crazy like Greek god looking thing. Um and the music is fantastic, and so really it is the build up and the multiple phases. You have to use maybe not all of your characters if you've gotten the extra characters in the game, but you use tons of I think a dozen characters. I think it's 3 sets of 4, but I could be wrong.
I think you might be right, yeah.
In order to fight him, because there's 3 different forms, but the forms, it's not like he's morphing. It's that you're literally like fighting the different areas of this really tall, like sort of, again, sort of like Greek statue looking thing with all these. It's just absolutely crazy. And so the build up and the final takedown, all of that kind of built together made for a fantastic final boss in my mind. So Kefka from Final Fantasy VI makes my list.
I mean, especially with like the build up throughout the entire game and how you see
Mhm.
this guy go from like basically nothing
Yeah.
to everything. Like I don't think I've seen characterization like that before in like any other game since, where you're just seeing like this entire crazy villainous arc just slowly, seeding its way throughout the entire game, and eventually it's just like, oh hey, well, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
it
he's this insane power.
it's pretty crazy. Yeah, sorry, just thinking about it. But he's a
Yeah.
clown too. That's the funniest part.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. He's literally just comic relief at the beginning of the game.
Hmm.
And yeah. Whew.
So a worthy choice, a worthy choice. I will accept that. Yes. Not as good as
Nice.
Sephiroth though, right?
Oh my goodness.
We'll get to that later. Okay. So my next choice, I only have 3 choices left, and I think you only have 3 choices left.
Yep.
So this will actually
Yep.
work perfectly because I combined 2. All right. So I don't know if you have played Pokemon Gold or Silver or Crystal. Have you played any of the second generation Pokemon games?
I played a little bit of Gold. I didn't finish it. I
Mhm.
didn't get very far because I was playing it on an emulator on my phone. Hmm.
Oh
Yeah.
no, terrible.
Years
But
years and years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Back in my youth when I'm allowed to make mistakes. So did you play red, blue, or yellow
Yes. Yeah, I
to
played a bunch of
completion?
blue.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Okay. So the final boss I want to mention is in gold, silver, crystal, that second generation of games. The thing that this game does unique that hasn't really been replicated since then is that in gold and silver, it's taking place in this area called like the Johto region. And you
Mhm.
you beat the 8 gyms there, you fight the Elite Four, and then all of a sudden, like you actually gain access to the region from red, blue, and yellow, the Kanto
Mhm.
region. So you get to like get on your little boat or your little bullet train and go over to that area, and you get to fight all of the original 8 gym leaders, or at least the 8 gyms there all over again, and earn all of those different badges and everything. And that in and of itself is pretty awesome.
Mhm.
And then you get to go and do a rematch with the Elite Four. But at the very end of the game, there's like this mythical, mystery thing happening where it's just like, okay, you have to get to the top of, I think it's Mount Silver or something. It's one of the mountains in the game that you haven't really been able to explore up to that point. But once you're like able to get all the badges done and you've beaten the Elite Four and everything, you get to hike up this mountain. And at the very tip top of this mountain, you get to meet the protagonist from Red, Blue, and Yellow.
Mm.
And you actually get to have a battle with your character, basically, from that game. And what
Nice.
makes this really memorable, other than like the fantastic music, is that the team that he actually has very closely mirrors the type of team that you would have had at that point in that game. And his Pokemon are like in like the low, like level 80s. You've never
Okay.
encountered Pokemon like this high of a level before. Not even the legendaries go that high.
Mhm.
And he's got a big old pack team of like 6 Pokemon, all of the starters from that game,
Okay.
Pikachu, I think there's like a Snorlax, a
Gotcha.
Lapras, or something. No, no, a Snorlax, and I think there was one of the EV evolutions and everything. And just
Okay.
the amount of prep time that you need to take in order to like be able to best your character from the first game is insane. It's insane. And he's basically like this, mythical figure at this point because he's the
Yeah.
one that beat Team Rocket. He's the one that was like the champion and everything. Like he's conquered the world and he's just sitting up there silently at the top of the mountain just contemplating something. And it's like one of the things that the Pokemon Adventures books do really well is that they really like flesh out these characters super awesomely. So it's like I'm kind of
Mhm.
transposing like those characters onto like these characters in the game and
Yeah.
everything. And it's just this is like, oh my goodness, this is like Clash of the Titans type thing. It's like this guy is like this super awesome trainer, and I can beat him. I can actually beat him if I plan hard enough and strategize hard enough. And it's a fantastic feeling when you finally
Nice.
beat him and he disappears and you're like, I'm the champion now. Eat it.
I get
So
to sit on the top of a mountain.
and not talk
That's
to anybody. Yeah. But it was
that's
such
so
a cool
cool.
feeling because
Yeah.
that was never spoiled when I was a kid. It's like,
Okay.
who's that at the top of the mountain? No, it's your character. It's you from the first game. So it's like, whoa.
Nice.
So
Does it give him a name?
I think it just calls him Red
Okay. Okay.
because I think that's the canon name
Right.
basically. And you get to
Yeah.
fight the Gary Oak character as like one of the gym leaders earlier on in the game. So he comes back as well, and you're interacting with all these characters you saw from the game that you just played a couple years ago. So it's all like already instantly nostalgic.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Mhm.
That's super cool. I'm surprised he doesn't have like a Mewtwo or a Dragonite.
You would
Or
you would think.
what Gengar was pretty good in that
Mhm.
first well, OP, I mean, I'll say, it wasn't first game wasn't exactly balanced. There were
No,
some
it was broken completely.
there were some Pokemon that were just clearly better than others, or types that were just
Mhm.
way better than other types.
And
Uh,
programming glitches actually made it actually so that specific type attacks that are supposed to be super effective against one were not effective whatsoever. So Psychic was clearly and obviously like the best type because it could
yeah.
demolish everything because of a programming glitch.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I didn't know that. Huh. Okay. Well, there you
So
go. Learn
it's
something new
funny.
every day. Uh, all right. Got three more. Okay, so this one is going to be kind of similar to Chainsaw Sisters, the Bell Sisters, in that the reason that this one is so difficult is because there's two of them. This is a very classic boss fight from the original Dark Souls. You go up against these two like soldiers, and they have They have some lore to them as well, so there's that if you're into lore, which if you're really into Dark Souls, you probably are. But regardless,
Or
they're called
masochism.
or masochism, then you got to have something to do while you're tending to your wounds, right? So why not read a bunch of lore? Their names are Ornstein and Smo. If you've heard of sort of like classic Dark Souls boss fights, you've probably heard of them. Because up to this point, you're taking one-on-one, and I mean this is the second half of the game for sure, if I remember correctly. But for a lot of these games, Dark Soulsborne in general, fighting one boss is tough enough, but fighting two at the same time can be absolutely infuriating. I will say my own personal experience, I did luck out, and it didn't take me that many tries. There's probably less than a dozen tries to take them down finally. But I kind of lucked out because they are very difficult because you have to know where the other one is at all times. Otherwise, they're gonna come up behind you and sneak attack you, and then it's just a number because one of them plays more. One is more ranged or can be has more ranged attacks, and the other one is just like a big bruiser with a huge. It looks like a gavel, but it's a huge hammer. So they are absolutely intense. Ornstein and Smo from Dark Souls. They make
Sounds
mountains.
like a name of an interesting comedy duo there. Ornstein and Smo.
Yes, right. Yeah, it's like the
I mean,
JJ version.
I have a hard enough time like fighting just like a single character in that
Mm.
game. Like just like what was it, skeletons in Dark Souls that you like meet early on and they try to attack you
Oh man,
by like
skeletons.
the first
Oh, that's
fire.
right. Yes. Yeah, there are some yes, yeah, they are skeletons. Sorry, I'm thinking of like the skeletons in the graveyard in that game are stupid because
Mhm.
they come back to life and they're dumb.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, you start off in that little prison and there are the skeleton characters. Yeah, for
hmm
sure.
I dropped a couple hours into Dark Souls, honestly. Like I
Okay.
was really trying to make it work. I was
Nice.
trying very, very hard to make it
Uh-huh.
work, but it just didn't work. It probably, because I was playing on the Switch, and that's, really, really tricky to play a game. I don't know if you beat it on the Switch. You probably did, like
No, I
17
played it on
times.
PC.
Oh,
So
PC, okay.
yeah, but the first one, I mean, your first Dark Souls game is your hardest. I put in 60 hours to beat the game. Basically, whenever there was something that was too difficult for me, I would go and grind for a little while, and
Mhm.
then that would help. There were two areas in particular that really, oh my goodness, it absolutely like they were infuriating. One was a boss. You fight multiple gargoyles on top of a roof, and oh my goodness, so many deaths because you're fighting multiple bosses at the same time, and it's stupid. Now, in that case, it was only after you'd like taken down the main one to like half health before another one shows up. So at least that one does that much. With Ornstein and Smo, they're just like from the beginning, nope, you're fighting two at the same time. Good
Oh my
luck.
goodness.
Um, yeah, and then another area was where you have to traverse like a very thin rail up from one rooftop to another while archers are shooting at you. And I fell off so many stinking times. Yeah, it was infuriating. But anyways, I digress. That's not a boss. That's a ledge.
I mean,
uh,
it's Dark Souls, so pretty much everything is a boss
everything's a
in that
boss.
game. Everything is a boss.
You're not wrong.
Just walking from like one side of the room to the other, that feels like a boss to me. I tried. I really tried. That game was so stinking hard for me.
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
But see, people respect me for getting all these, RPGs done in such a short time. But I'm like, no, no, you guys, y'all are the real MVPs. If you can get through Dark Souls and Bloodborne and everything, my
Uh,
hat's off to you. None of my accomplishments matter in comparison.
uh,
But
I mean, if you
yes,
play Dark Souls like an RPG, then you can eventually do it. But you have to just dump a ton of time into grinding. But
yeah, I time dilation powers don't work on Dark Souls. I
right.
found that out real quick. So, all right.
Nice.
So my next one,
Mhm.
gonna have to bring up the fantastic, the amazing Earthbound
All right.
franchise, or
Yeah.
Mother as it is in Japanese. And it was really hard to limit this just to like the one like end game boss, because all of the end game bosses in each of the three games are super memorable in their own right. But I will have to give it, ultimately to the one in Earthbound Mother 2, and that's Gigas or Gigu or
Uh-huh.
Gigas Gigantus. I don't know what his name is
Yeah.
actually. Every final boss is great, but this one in particular, like really like struck home with me in particular, because
Yeah.
the object is actually like you are trying to throw everything that you can at this boss that you've learned over the entire course of the game. And if you were crazy like me and grinded to get like the sword of the kings with Pooh, and oh my goodness, you try to outfit your characters with like the
Woo.
best weapons you can, and you get to the end and you're just finding like none of this preparation like really is working on this boss. Like you're throwing everything that you can at it, all of your PSI powers, all of your weapons, nothing's taking this thing down. But
Hmm.
then you notice there's this one little option that you probably ignored up until now. It was there the entire time, and that was the pray option. And not to get too theological or spiritual and everything, but yeah, I'm sure you can come up with some really interesting, like good theological connections to how prayer is typically the last resort for you know us mortal humans and all that. I'm sure you can make some good connections there.
Yeah.
But it's the entire point is that in order to defeat this final boss, you have to pray a certain amount of times, and you just basically have to like withstand the attacks that he's throwing at you during these times and heal up as much as you can. But prayer is the only answer. And as you're praying, yeah, obviously, it's like prayer is the only answer. That's good for life too.
Yeah.
But as you're praying, like you're getting these glimpses of the characters that you've met throughout your journey and everything, and they're connecting to you through the same way, and they're praying as well. And like basically, this final boss, this big like epitome of all evil that's been unleashed upon this earth, very similar to Lavos actually from Chrono Trigger.
Hmm.
Throughout time and all that, and you have to time travel and all that. But like the prayers, get to your main characters, and through the power of prayer, this final boss, Gigas, he's actually exposed to like the power of love, basically.
Hmm.
And it has a lot of echoes back to like the first Mother game and
Right.
everything. And I really enjoyed the connections that they made between those two games in that regard, and bringing up the same song that plays with this alien and his mother that's actually like on Earth and all that raised him and everything. And it's such a heartwarming battle. Honestly, it's tragic, but it's like heartwarming. It's like your only resource here is prayer, so pray
Hmm.
away, do it.
Yeah.
And then that's eventually what fells him. It's like it's not all this like violence and these weapons and everything that you've done up until now. No, it's the power of prayer. And I really appreciated like that kind of message being sent to the kids. Not necessarily presented in the Christian context or anything, but I think it's reflective of like the kind of like 80s and 90s atmosphere that they're trying to get into the game for like you know America. So
Hmm.
I know it was super interesting to me. And the boss in Mother 3 is like infinitely tragic, and I would love to bring that up here, but that would spoil so much. And I hear it's made people cry, and it may have made
Uh,
me a little bit dusty eyed as well. But
oh,
oh,
dang.
that boss just oh, it's a punch to the gut. The entire thing is a punch to the gut. But
Oh, man.
that's for another day.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. When and if. Like, I definitely, yeah, after playing the first and the second, I definitely want to play the third. It's just how, you know. Yeah. Yeah. There are ways, but I also have a backlog. I don't know.
Yeah,
Someday
yeah.
I'll get to it
For a
eventually.
game called Mother, you definitely don't want to be a father playing that game. I'm just gonna leave that there,
Oh,
right there.
ouch.
It is.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
man.
But I digress.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just say that Gygas made my list as well, however you pronounce his name. He was definitely on my list, but I knew I was talking with you today. I knew he was going to be on your list. So I cut him just so that I could talk about some other ones. But yes, he definitely deserves to be there because it's such a weird boss battle. It's so out of left in a game full of weird boss battles. Like this one is mechanically weird, and it's almost this strange like mechanically it feels anticlimactic as like you talked about grinding for like these ultimate weapons, and that's not what ends up beating him. So mechanically there's that, but it is so satisfying because of what ends up happening and how you're actually able to beat him in sort of a shonen kind of way. You know, everyone around the world bands together to fight him. It's not like you haven't seen that before, but it is very satisfying in the context of the game. So definitely one of the best bosses of all time, for sure. I totally agree. Even if he wasn't on my personal list, he deserves to be there for sure.
You knew who you were talking to, so
Exactly. Exactly. I knew that you would bring him up. So and you delivered. So here we are.
yes.
Awesome. Down to the last two. I think one of them is the same because we've already mentioned in our talks. We've already mentioned this one's going to be on. So I'll save that one for last.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that these are from the same series, sort of. And this one is way. I mean, I feel like this game is so out of left field that like I don't know if anyone listening has ever played it. Okay, whatever. Um, favorite games of all time is Shin Megami Tensei. It's a spin-off. It's not Devil Survivor. Right? Am I thinking the right term? It's got this stinking long. Yeah, it's Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor.
On
Um,
PS2?
no,
Oh.
it's for DS.
Oh, the
So
DS one. Okay.
am I crazy? Is that not what it's called?
I think
Because
it.
it's overclocked
Uh-huh.
is the one that I played. Yeah, Devil Survivor. Yes,
Okay.
of course. Duh, because it's DS. It's Shin Megami Tensei
Oh.
DS. Come on. I should have
I've
known. Like
never.
that's
Oh wow. I hate Nintendo sometimes with these puns.
so yeah, Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor. I played Overclocked, which is the remake for 3DS that adds some content and it adds voice acting. So not too much, but it's there. Um, the final boss, and there are tons of different endings. So there it's not really the final boss. Technically, the game is 7 days. It's the boss of day 7, but then depending on your decisions throughout the game, there's an eighth day, and so you can continue to play after that. But the final boss of day 7, the one that you will fight no matter what your decisions are, my understanding at least, is the boss is his name is Babel, and Babel ends up. It's basically a test to see if you will become the most powerful being. And what Babel does is Babel summons all of the previous bosses from the game up to that point. Sort of. Not necessarily all of them, but a lot of the standout bosses. The ones there's a certain I'm trying not to spoil anything, so sorry that I'm kind of dancing around it. But there is a certain class of boss in the game. I'll just put it that way. And it summons all of those from that class that you have fought up until that point. Sometimes two at a time, sometimes one at a time. And so like the first bosses that it summons are easy because by this time in the game you've become a lot more powerful. But it's kind of like, oh, I just fought this thing like pretty soon after. And when it summons these, it's actually the second form of the boss. So you've already fought the first form, and then it turns into its real form, and then it summons all these other bosses and you fight them. And then you have to finally, once you've beaten all those, then you have to go up against it, and it's insanely powerful. So it's like this huge boss gauntlet at the end of the game that will beat you down if you're unprepared. As I do, I just grinded a lot and got some really powerful demons. I basically needed to have a team that had multiple characters with the ability to revive and heal all of your HP, and basically use those as support characters for my main character because he was constantly dying because it was so difficult. Uh, but to me, that feels like kind of the ultimate challenge, and like you have to play this game on its terms. Like you might have used other strategies to get up to this point, but now like this is a real test to actually beat it. And man, it feels so good to finally beat this boss. um, I do also have to say there's another boss that's somewhat similar, and that is the final alternate, like the final boss of Octopath Traveler. if you've done everything in the game, then you unlock this very final boss fight. He's very similar in that he summons other bosses throughout the game before you fight it. Um, as much as I love that battle, it didn't make my list simply because there's some gaping flaws, I think, to that battle. And one is that you have to use a fairly specific strategy in order to beat the boss, and you will not know it if you have not gotten up to the boss. And because you have to beat all these other bosses before you beat it, it's like an hour's worth of work that you will lose the first time you fight it. Like there's no there's no way around it basically. Unless yeah, so I love that boss in Octopath, but it's kind of cheap. Whereas Babel is similar, except that he's just really, really powerful. It's not that there's necessarily a specific strategy, but it is certainly like you need to gird up your loins in order to take down this boss. So Babel from Devil Survivor is one of my favorite bosses.
That, my friends, is why I have not beaten Octopath Traveler yet. That game is crazy hard.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, and I love it for it. I love it because it's like you're not going to play on your terms. You have to play on my terms.
Mhm. Yeah. Interesting. Like I've never played the Devil Survivor games
Mhm.
and all that, so I was expecting some more like satanic names for like the final boss. But Babel, that just seems like that's pretty innocuous, I suppose.
Yeah, it is so sort of. I mean, it is definitely a biblical reference.
Hmm.
Because it is like this. I mean, when you fight it, it's like this sideways look, but it's like this monolith that comes down from the heavens.
Hmm.
So yes, and I mean, obviously, the game. They're demons that you have in the
Hmm.
game. They're not just personas. But the well, hmm, again, I'm not sure how much to spoil, but there is like it is making reference to a class of demons, I'll
Okay.
say.
Hmm.
So it's not demonic in the sense that like, oh, it's Lucifer, it was Lucifer the whole time, like some of the other games are, like a lot of the games are. This one takes a different turn, but it is okay, I'll say this. The test that you're going up against is whether or not you're powerful to become like lord over the demons.
Okay.
Not necessarily in the way like depending on, whether you've gone chaos or law, which again I mentioned, I always go law. So whatever. So it's not like you're the king of hell. No, not necessarily, but like you are powerful enough that all other demons, archdemons will recognize that okay, this dude has authority over me because otherwise he's going to murder me.
It's interesting you bring up Lucifer, though. Slight tangents.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've heard of the Demi Kids game.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay,
Yeah, I
those
haven't
games and
played him, but
everything,
yeah.
and I remember like specifically seeing them in stores, and I'm like, I have no idea what this is. Demi Kids. I don't know. Does that mean they're kind of kids, partially kids? I
Uh-huh.
don't know.
Right,
Have
yeah.
no idea. No idea the connection to the Shin Megami Tensei universe. So finally picked up the dark version, and I think it was like earlier this year. Started it up on my Game Boy and everything, and like instantly you're greeted with the scene of like this demon in hell. He's like, "Hey Lucifer, what are we gonna do?" Da 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 da. It's just like, oh my goodness, I am glad I did not pick this game up as a kid because instantly you're confronted with Lucifer, demons, and everything. Like,
Wow.
oh shoot, yeah, my parents would not have let me play that game. But I digress. That was a slight tangent.
Nice.
So
Nice. Yeah, I mean, yeah, demons all over the place in those games.
there you go.
And I
And
still love them.
speaking of these, you know, kind of fantastical, mythical, mystical, demonic type characters. I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure we both have the same one at number one. So I'll let you do
Yeah.
the honors because you completed the game first to introduce the best baddie of all time, the best boss.
Mm.
Please do the honors.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you had one more. No,
Nope.
we're already down there because you did the double. My bad.
Hmm.
Okay, this is you think it would have kind of a more menacing name, but this is from Persona 3. The final boss in Persona 3 it's called Nyx's Avatar. And It's basically the personification of death coming to the earth to destroy everyone, which is interesting because you can actually fight the Grim Reaper in the game, which will basically kill you instantly. There's a way to beat it, but I
Hmm.
was not that insane. I didn't. I was never able to actually beat
Nope.
it. Yeah, didn't stand a chance. So the Nyx avatar, and I guess similar to what we've talked about here before, it's not that the entire game has kind of like, talked about this thing coming, but towards the end of the game, it is certainly, behind everything else was the coming of this thing or the summoning of this thing, really,
Hmm.
throughout the game. But towards the end, the final, I guess, like quarter of the game, when you realize what's going to happen and the toll that it takes on your characters and how your character, and this is why I love the cast so much, how their resolve is we're going to fight this, but they're also teenagers and they're like, we're going to fight this. Right? We are going to fight this, right? Can we actually do this?
Hmm.
Like there's this sense of just like dread because they're not sure that they can actually do what they've all resolved to do. So I mean, first and foremost, yeah, just what it represents through in the game itself is fantastic. On top of that, the mechanics of the fight. It is a multi-layered fight that goes through all of the different arcana in the game. Arcana, I don't know how to pronounce it,
Hmm.
but so it basically, like in a Final Fantasy game, it takes the form of fire and then ice and then earth and then, light. Th- um but it cycles through each of them, so each time it has a different weakness, which if you've
Hmm.
played a Shin Megami Tensei game, it's very important to hit an enemy's weakness. So this one has all of, like, it cycles through all of them, and it also is very resistant to other types of attacks as well, and because of the way that it cycles through.
And
um
it can even heal from some type of attacks that hit it, and it's very frustrating. And don't get us wrong. This is not just the normal like form change for bosses where it goes through like one or two forms. This goes through all the Arcana, which is
right.
like what 12 to 14. This is like a
Yes.
12 to 14 different form boss, and it
Hmm.
is completely crazy,
Yeah.
absolutely crazy.
Yes. Yeah, and yeah, like you think, yeah, oh man, yeah, healing it too, because it can change in between turns. So
Hmm.
like if you've told one of your characters, or no, that's what it was. So because this is one of the drawbacks of Persona 3 is that in the original version or in the PlayStation, so either the original or FES, you can't actually control your other characters. You can only control your main character. Your other characters are AI controlled, so they might attack and heal it
Hmm.
if it changes, which was a big pain in the butt. But this is seriously, I mean, like an hour-long fight at least. Um, and oh my goodness, and then the music that plays too is so good. Like the whole thematically, it is just done so well. And then you fight this, yeah, this multi-layered boss that you're constantly on the edge of like dying and reviving and then gaining ground, and then it feels like you're on the brink of death. Ugh, it's 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 so good because it toys with you. And
Oh
you're
yeah.
like even when it starts changing arcana the first few times, you're like, okay, 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 this happened. Wait, is it seriously gonna go through all of these? Like you really gonna have to, yeah, like fight like 13 different versions.
Hmm.
And it's not like it has like a ton of HP each time, but it's like you have to change up your strategy each time. So it feels like a chess game.
Yeah,
You have to kind
which
of corner.
itself, yeah, like okay, here's my experience with it. I've only played the
Okay.
portable version of it, which does allow you to actually have direct control of your characters, which
Mhm.
was like an absolutely wonderful addition, and I cannot believe they didn't let you do that before because
Right.
that just seems like a completely crazy oversight.
Hmm.
Like I cannot even imagine trying to play this while not being able to control all of your different characters. This just seems insane to me. But what I really appreciated about it is that, like you said, it's like this personification of death itself and the dread that they're feeling throughout the game. And obviously not getting into too many spoilers because this game is best experienced like not knowing everything, but
Mhm.
just understanding like where these characters have come from throughout their journey with you and how they have gotten to interact with you and open up over time and sharing these like dark secrets about like how they're feeling, and you actually get to see much of the trauma that they actually have to
Yeah.
go through and like, you know, actual death in many cases,
Yep.
and just their experiences with that and the reactions to it. And as you're all coming together to fight this, like basically like the symbolic personification of death and everything, and trying to understand it and realizing kind of like the inevitability of it all. Ah, man, it just
Mhm.
like gets you right in the gut, right in the gut.
Yeah.
The thing that I texted you, like as soon as I beat that boss, was this is the best boss fight I've ever experienced in a game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this is better than Earthbound, because like really all of these different games that I mentioned, you know, like mechanically or like symbolically or like what these different boss battles mean. Like this basically encompasses all those different like super cool aspects of a good boss battle.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I've ever seen a boss battle done
Yeah, that's true.
as good as this game.
Yeah. And then even you're talking about the themes of the game. I was thinking about, mechanics and like actually fighting it. But then even as you get towards the end, the main character has to do in order to uh fend off this boss, because you don't actually kill it.
Hmm.
It's sort of spoilery territory here. But when you beat it, it doesn't actually die.
Because
And
it is
and so
death. So
right.
there you go. You can't really kill death.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. There's so much to talk about. Uh
Mm.
I mean, just in the game in general, because even how you mentioned um experiencing the different forms of trauma and then death as well, because there's a point in this game. um I know a lot of gamers have an affinity for a certain scene with Aerith. Um but there's a point in this game
I can't believe
that
you're going there.
that hit me harder. I'll put it that way.
Hmm.
But I mean, admittedly, I'm not a big fan of Final Fantasy VII in general. But yeah, yeah, there's a very jarring point in this. So you feel it as a player, as well as you see these other characters going through it. And so yeah, oh man, you know what? That's a really good point, because I said you don't really know this main boss Nyx until the very end of the game. And while that's true, because it's this personification of death, and death is something that you've been having to deal with through the entire game, um, it sort of has been looming, the entire time.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, just to heap a little bit more praise on Persona 3, because I'm such a fanboy, is that may sound just very like edgelord if you haven't played the game, but I will say that they actually treat it very delicately.
Hmm.
Um, like you feel the impact of these things for sure. I'm not saying they blunt it, but I'm saying that it's not just like, it's not a gore fest. It's not just, like emo slit your wrists kind of a thing. Like, no, I think they actually kind of try and tackle these themes as much as they can from a, from their perspective.
And not only that, but like they take those, criticisms basically. It's like, oh yeah, emo edgelord thing, and they actually like combat that in the game itself, because you do come across these different characters that represent these more like, oh, emo edgelord, that sort of thing. Oh, this is like super dark and grimy and gritty and everything and all that. It's like, no, they
Mhm.
directly like address those concerns throughout the game and show you how wrong that perspective is
Mhm.
necessarily. So it's like jarring to see that sort of thing like actually play out in the game. And it's kind of an overplayed word, but it's like it's a mature way. Like this is
Yeah.
actually a sensible, mature way of tackling these different ideas and like these different bad ideas that people have, and they address them. They're not going to shy away from them. And in the game that's primarily about death, it's good that they're actually like taking a look at how people can like misconstrue this idea of death and like what it can actually mean for different characters at different times in their life and everything. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just shocked that it took me this long to play the game.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it was kind of Persona 4, I feel like is where the series really blew up in
Mhm.
the consciousness. Now maybe I just wasn't, super into video games at the time when this one was released. I don't know. I just feel like 4, as like obscure as it is to like actually get a copy of that, or at least it has been. Now it's on Steam. But, like Vita, um I feel like 4 is where it really became popular. So 3 is like, oh, if you're cool, and I was there, back when it first started, kind of a thing. Uh,
Mhm.
but but for me, I'm glad that I experienced Persona 3 first, uh, just because I like I didn't have anything. I didn't go in with any expectations, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So
Yeah.
because mechanically, I mean, not to continue to talk about Persona 3, but I'm going to anyway. The mechanics, like I talked about, not being able to control your characters, like Persona 4 plays better than Persona 3. I just think Persona 3 tells a better story, has better characters, and so overall, I enjoyed it more. So
It's the Final Fantasy 6 to Persona 4's Final Fantasy 7.
yeah, I guess you could
Let's
say
go with
that.
that.
I guess you
We'll
could
go with
say that.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Except I actually enjoyed Persona 4, but no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I don't think that Final Fantasy 7 is a terrible game. I don't.
No.
Um I have much more animosity for Final Fantasy 8 than I do for 7. But that's a whole other conversation. That
Hot
has nothing to
takes.
do with bosses. Unless I want to throw the last boss of 8 in worst bosses. But actually, you know what? That's a good segue. Why don't we go? Uh, I don't know. Or do we want to do any kind of runner up? I don't know. I'll just list off my runner ups real quickly. Okay. I had Mike Tyson from Mike Tyson's Punch Out, because that dude's insane. He's just, like, that's ridiculous. I also had Shadow Link from Zelda 2, another like super tough as nails boss. If you don't cheese it, you can cheese it if you want to, but it's cool to fight yourself. That's just cool. I threw in the Big Daddies in Bioshock because it feels really cool the first time you fight it and you take one down, because it just feels like this huge like force of nature, and then to actually take it down, yeah, it just feels great. um Gigas or Gygas and Psycho Mantis were runners up. And then I can't remember exactly. You'll probably remember better than I. But at the end of Bravely Default, I
Ah,
remember fighting, well, spoiler. Yeah, here we go. Fighting Aerie felt really good to finally stick it to her. But then
yes.
Ouroboros
Mhm.
was a pretty intense battle as well. So those are just some
Especially,
runner ups.
especially with the fourth wall breaking stuff.
Yeah,
Honestly.
yeah, yeah. So it's
Now,
so it's kind of like the end of that game, not even necessarily a single boss fight. It's just like the whole end of that game.
especially after a really brutal mid game. Very
Cool. Oh.
now. I don't have any runner-ups, but I
Mhm.
did notice something that you were mentioning. So, Shadow Link from Zelda 2 and everything. So,
Yes.
what you're saying, Link fights like a shadow version of himself. So, does that make Link the original Persona user? Because
There
we
you
got to bring
go.
Persona into
In
everything,
order,
just for Paul,
yes.
just for Paul.
So in Zelda, can you date your teacher? That's the question. Because obviously you're dating multiple versions of Zelda.
That's
Because
true.
the one Zelda that's sleeping was what, the daughter of the Zelda that you say? No, I'm just kidding. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what I'm talking about. None of the Zeldas are connected. The whole Zelda mythos and whatever comes whenever was all just made up so that it could all connect together. None of them are really in the same timeline. It's a myth, guys.
I hate to
Anyways.
break it to you. They're video games. They're all made up. I
Yeah.
don't know if you thought they were real, but
Anyways, my 2 cents. Okay. Do you have any worst bosses that
oh,
are
I have
just
a
fun?
bunch of worse bosses. Okay,
Okay. I
get
only
ready
have a
for a
few. Yeah.
big list of hot takes.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we got to hit the big one first, and that is
Okay.
Sephiroth. Okay,
Okay.
so I do not have too much hatred for Final Fantasy VII. I enjoy the game. I
Right.
enjoyed it for
Yeah.
what it was. Came out at a great time. Very formidable. angsty emo years and everything, and Sephiroth was kind of like that. He's so cool. All right, da, 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 da.
Yes.
Advent Children came out. You thought he was like the coolest dude on the block,
Yeah.
but oh my goodness, that final fight, obviously against Sephiroth. That's not really a spoiler to say that the main villain of the game is the final boss you fight.
Yeah.
I hate that final boss so much, so
Okay.
much. Specifically because he casts, what is it, Meteor? I think he casts Meteor, and you
Okay.
have to go through an FMV cutscene every single time he casts the stupid spell, and it's this big giant meteor going through all the different planets and everything, and you see it every single time he casts it, and going on like a PlayStation where the battles are taking
Yes.
forever as it is. No, this is totally unnecessary. This is a very, very stupid thing. Don't do this ever again.
I was about to say that is so PlayStation 1.
Like
Yeah.
that battle is just so shenanigans, and it's like that's not like the final form. And I felt like the final form of Sephiroth that was better, but oh my goodness, everything leading up to that is just shenanigans. So putting
Yeah.
Sephiroth there.
Yeah, that's true. And that was Nate's one wish, is that we mentioned Sephiroth
Mm-hmm.
as a worst boss. So when I talked about how he was going to show up later in the podcast, that was what he wanted us to say. Is Sephiroth is a punk, and yeah, he's just the worst.
There you go. Yes. You've hit the quota for but I will say, well, never mind. That'll spoil things. So Final Fantasy VII Remake definitely does
Ah,
better things. Better
ooh,
things. Way better.
interesting.
Highly
Cool.
recommend people check that game out because that is a really good game.
Nice.
But got a couple other things here.
Mm.
I'm also going to bring up Zelda.
Okay.
This is the original Legend of Zelda, the first one on the NES,
Okay.
and it's not really a boss per se, but I'm going to say that entire eighth dungeon can just go die in a fire, like to burn it down. The entire thing is
Okay.
horrible, terrible design. Whatever those Deku Nut things, whatever those knights that battle you, they can just go
Oh
die.
yeah.
I hate that
Mhm.
entire thing. I have never been able to beat it because of that final dungeon. That
Okay.
whole dungeon is my boss. I don't like it. That game is overrated. Going along with a different
Mm.
game,
Mm.
I'm gonna also burn some bridges here. I'm gonna say most Mario games, most of those final battles, they're terrible. Most of them are, especially Mario 64.
Oh, okay.
Every
Okay.
Bowser fight in Mario 64 is dumb. I don't like it. They are all terrible because you have to go around him, you have to grab him by the tail, you have to like spin him around, you have to aim somehow in this 3D space against the
Interesting.
bomb, so you can like hit him against the bomb and everything. But if you throw him off, then your entire time is wasted. Oh, it's so frustrating. I
Mm.
I, I love Mario 64 to death. I hate every Bowser fight basically ever. The only
Wow.
good Bowser is the one that joins you in Mario RPG. That's my hot take for today.
Yeah, he's definitely pretty good in that. Actually, Bowser did make my list as well.
Mm,
Because well, for that same thing. And you're right. I mean, it's a lot of Mario bosses, to be honest. Because I can't even remember his name in Mario 3. The one that constantly is always at the end of the castle levels. Um I can't remember it,
oh
but
yeah, that guy,
the
the
one you
turtle
jump
guy.
on 3 times. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, they're all
Sorry.
turtle guys. Yeah.
Right, but after the 3rd time you fight him, it's kinda like, "Okay, why are we doing this again?" Like, you've clearly just recycled the same thing. "Oh, this time you gave him wings." Okay, that's kinda cool, but why, like, every single castle you have to fight
Yeah.
this thing? Like, you can't think of anything else? But,
Any good
I
player could
digress.
beat that guy within 5 seconds of getting to the castle. Like
Yeah,
it's nothing basically after like the
right.
second and third time.
Yes, yes, exactly. And yeah, I agree that it's very similar with Bowser himself. He's often a pushover. Yeah, he's not good. I've never played Mario 64, so I don't know what he's like in that. It's funny that you say that because I saw him on some of the best of lists in Mario 64. I just haven't played Mario 64, so I don't know.
Those people
But
clearly have bad taste.
for
Sorry.
it.
Sorry, not sorry.
So it is a hot take, but I completely agree with you. Often Mario bosses are not very good. There are occasionally good ones, and
Mhm.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the Koopa kids, Koopa cousins from Mario 3. They're fun,
Mhm.
but there's a lot. That's kind of the exception rather than the rule. in
Right.
general.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes,
Even
I
up
agree.
into like the new Super Mario Brothers games, like Bowser's just a terrible boss to end on. Even in Odyssey, I didn't enjoy it. Like it's like, oh yeah, this is
Okay.
the final boss. You go through the same thing over and over again. It differs very little game to game.
Did you ever play Mario U? The Mario, or excuse me, Mario 3D Land, right?
Right. For the
Mario
3DS?
3D World. Mario 3D
Oh,
World on Wii U. That's
yes, I
what it's called.
did.
Okay. Do you remember the Bowser fight at the end of that one? Climbing up the building. How he's like kind of rabid looking.
Here's the thing about
Okay.
that game, Super Mario 3D World. I played that along with my wife,
Uh-huh.
and we played co-op on that.
Yeah.
And we decided it was a really bad idea for us to play that game co-op.
Gotcha.
So that
Because she's
game
just
in
so good,
general,
right?
she's so good, yeah, and I'm really bad, and
Gotcha.
that's just not going to work for our relationship.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
yes, I do remember that one a little bit. That one did
Mhm.
stick out a little bit because you were climbing a building and everything, and that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But no,
Right. Yeah. In general. Cool.
I have two more on my list. Two more.
Okay.
Sorry,
Me
I got to
too.
mention them
I
real
have
quick.
two more.
Okay.
Although
Uh,
might disagree with one of them, but anyways.
Probably not. Probably not. You're usually right. So, Kingdom Hearts. Okay, here's the thing
Okay.
about Kingdom Hearts. All the battles are basically the same. You just
Hmm.
rush in,
Yep.
attack, do some
Yep.
magic, heal up, try to rely on Donald Duck, but realize that he's just going to break your heart all the time. But there's
Uh,
this one battle in the original Kingdom Hearts
mhm,
that, I mean, I was certainly mentally saying a lot of curse words during this
mhm.
boss battle, like right when it first came out, like in 2001 or 2002. So it was really hard, and I probably verbally said a lot of bad words too, just kind of under my breath. That would be the Ursula battle from the Little Mermaid world. And
Okay.
what makes that battle insane is that the entire Little Mermaid world is underwater, and you have
Mhm.
to control Sora as a merman type character. So you have to like think of like, okay, going up, going down, going around, and everything. You have to like really explore better with like his merman capabilities, and that I probably spent like an entire day just going and replaying that battle over and over again. And then I had gotten that when I broke my leg, so I was in a cast. So like there
Oh,
was nothing I could do except play video games.
yeah.
So it's like I spent my entire Saturday just doing that over and over and over again.
Ugh.
And when I finally beat that level, I was, so full of like anger for Ursula, more so
Mhm.
than normal. And I was so relieved and everything. I just bashed the PlayStation 2 controller like against the ground and broke it, which made things a lot trickier. But then several years later,
Oh man.
I had a roommate who was trying to play that exact world, and he was having the same problem I was. And my
Ugh.
muscle memory was so attuned to that stupid battle that I was able to basically go right in, play that one time, first try, boom, beat Ursula. And I was like, I'm done with this game forever. I'll never play this again.
Dang.
It's like that is trauma. That is living trauma right there that you just witnessed, sir. That's why I hate
Ugh.
Ursula.
Ugh. All right. Ugh, man. Yeah, the underwater stuff is not great in general. But yeah, PS2 clunkiness doesn't exactly make that any easier. So
No.
yeah, that makes sense. So I don't have any like both of these are just kind of meh. Like it's not like I can't end on a big note. That's what I'm trying to do, and it's not happening here. So the
Don't
one
worry,
that
I
I'll
will.
say,
I will.
okay, great. Then I'm looking forward. Then I'll say both of mine, and then you can then because we'll save the best for last. So I'll say so. My first one here is Fontaine, the final battle in Bioshock, which
Oh,
amazingly I oh yeah, sorry, just spoiled Bioshock. Um, amazingly, the I saw a list on which he was like touted as one of the he was either one of the best or one of the hardest bosses, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Because he was easy. I think I died once, but like he was very simple, and even Ken Levine has gone on record as saying like, yeah, he was just kind of thrown together at the last minute because we were told that the game needed a final boss. So even he like doesn't like the fact that he was in the game, that he had to be in the game in that form. So yeah, he was very he was very anticlimactic for such a good game. He was anticlimactic. Okay, so the other one is a little bit of a hot take, sort of a little joke. I get it. He's more of a tutorial than a boss, but still, it annoyed me how many times he showed up. And you've already mentioned him in another form. But it's Gary Oak in the original Red and Blue. He was just such a joke. He was never difficult. He picked the the Pokemon that you were strong against. So like he never stood a chance anyway. But he was always a joke and he was a punk. And apparently like he reforms himself. So that's great. But in Red and Blue, he was just a joke. So I think he's the worst.
I will have to correct you on that. No, he always
Okay.
picked the one that's strongest against yours,
Oh,
elemental
really?
wise.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
if you have like any like brains in your head, you know how Pokemon works.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can trounce him. And the thing that gets me about him is that he is actually considered to be like the champion after you go up against Lance in the Elite Four. Now, if you know anything about Lance, Lance has three, not one, not two, but three Dragonites at his disposal. And he wrecks shop. Lance is like a boss, like the boss, basically. You know,
Yeah.
definitive article there.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, like Gary O comes and he's like, "Yeah, I'm the champion. I beat everybody. Now you gotta beat me." And I'm just like, "Yeah, shut up, dude."
You're the worst. Also, he was a punk in the anime too. So
Oh, for sure, yeah.
yeah. So okay, I'm glad I'm not ruffling feathers there.
Oh no, Gary is
Cool.
the worst. Although
Cool.
he is redeemed in gold and silver quite a
Yeah.
bit, actually. He
Yeah.
eats some humble pie.
Nice. That's
So
good.
it's they do a good thing with him. Okay, so I gotta get my runner up here first before I get to the big one.
Okay.
So here's my runner up, Mega Man X. I love Mega Man X to death. That is one of
Yeah.
my favorite Mega Man games ever. I played that so many times. I've even gotten the Hadoken. I am
Yes.
that much committed to Mega Man X.
Music
That
to
being
my
said,
ears.
that music, oh my goodness, that music's so good too.
It's true.
But that final boss against Sigma is I can't even think of a good word to describe just how terrible that final boss is. He is such a pain in the butt. It literally gets to the point where like there's nowhere in the room that you can hide from his attacks coming forward, that you have to get hit. You have to like take damage from him. The other thing. And as a kid, I was never, ever, ever able to beat him. That was like my like, giant piece of shame, honestly, because I loved that game so much, but I could never beat Sigma. And I didn't beat him until just a couple years ago when I had it on 3DS. And you know what? Of course, I save scummed it. I save scummed it proudly. Oh man, I hate
Well,
Sigma. Sigma can go die in a fire,
you,
just
you
like the.
you say you save scummed it, but really that last level. So here's my experience is playing it. I did beat it when I was a teenager, but it's because that last level, it's literally it's probably the worst level in all of gaming, because you literally just climb up the walls and that's all that it is.
Right.
But there are enemies there, and so like you save scumming was basically the same thing that I would do, except I was just like killing the little bugs that would come out of the walls, gaining more life, refilling all my energy tanks, and hopefully getting one ups as well. So it's not much different than save scumming, really.
Right.
It just takes a lot longer and it's way more annoying.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't blame you for doing that.
He's absurd, and I'm like, how in the world did I play Mega Man 2, and I can get all the way up to like the
Yeah.
Dragon Boss and everything, but
Mhm.
Sigma, of all people, the
Yeah.
bald-headed Sephiroth of the Mega Man family.
Yeah, he's pretty edgelord. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know.
Um, so which are you specifically talking about, the third form?
Yeah, the third form where he's got his little claws out and everything, and you have to like
Yeah.
jump on his claws, and I think you have to use the rolling shield as like
Yep.
the main weapon and everything.
That's
I just
it.
can never do it.
Yeah.
But apparently, like, there's one specific place that you could stand on his hand. Like, you have to be super pixel perfect, but if you stand on his hand in exactly one place, you'll never get hit, and you can basically just keep hitting him as much as you want. And I did not
Oh,
discover that
wow.
until I was an adult. I was like, man, this would have made my childhood a lot easier.
Yeah. No, it was constantly moving and then hoping that you can jump on the ledge that actually lifts up to where you could actually
Mhm.
reach him.
Yeah.
Totally. But it was also I had 4 E-tanks. So, like
So did I.
that's the
I don't
only
get
way. Yeah.
ah. Okay. So the final one.
Cool.
The final one. I'm
Mm?
going to break
Mm?
Nate's heart. I'm going to break his heart.
Oh.
But
Oh.
I have never, okay,
Oh.
Sigma, terrible. Ursula, awful. Bowser, whatever. The final boss in Shadow of the Colossus, though,
Mhm.
I don't think I've raged harder about a final boss than that one.
Wait,
And I am going to,
even breaking a PS2 controller.
yeah, yeah. I almost broke the PS4 controller. Trust me. But I don't usually get angry when I'm playing games.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I got livid during that final boss. And when it's just this one like slight jump away and it's the PS2 mechanics really working against me, the oh, it was so frustrating. Like I
Yeah.
will never like I finally beat that. Like it was probably like a 3 hour like
Holy.
battle that I did. It was ridiculous. That took me like
Whoa.
that was like I don't know, 40% of my game time right there was just on that final boss because I could just not get the jumps right when you're supposed to like go from like the hair on his arms to like the different parts that you're
Yeah.
supposed to get to
Okay.
up to
Yeah.
his
Uh-huh.
shoulder or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just kept
And then
getting
you
knocked
fall
off
all the way down.
all the way down. And then you have to go through that entire section again, dodging whatever like is thrown at you at that point. And I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in a game. I will probably I'm sorry, I'm gonna break his heart more. I will probably never, ever, ever go back to that game ever again, just because of that final boss battle.
Simply because of that.
I'm very salty about the ending to that game. And I'm
Yeah.
probably breaking Micah's heart as well. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry guys, but I cannot even fathom how anybody could feel like that's fun. There was nothing fun about that final battle. I'm sure if you're like a really awesome expert at the game, but it was just all the mechanics working against me. Like I can't abide by that. And that's why it earns the worst award from me.
Okay. I can see it. It was frustrating for me as well. Um th- so sorry, I'm trying to play through this in my head because I do think the atmosphere was very cool.
It was.
I do think like in concept, scaling this huge thing, I get it, but mechanically it was clunky.
Very clunky.
There was a huge it wasn't even like a huge like life or death type thing if you fell off. It was just a frustration of like, oh, okay, it's gonna take me another what feels like 10 minutes to get
Easily.
back to where I was.
Mhm.
Um so it was more just annoyance. So I'll put it this way. Like because of the atmosphere, because of the buildup, it feels really cool at first. And then once you start doing it again and again and again, then it's no like you lose that sense of immersion and
Mhm.
it's no longer you scaling this thing. It's you sitting trying to push these buttons at the right moment in order to get to the next part. It totally takes you out of the experience.
Exactly.
I agree.
And I was like in a perfect setting for this too, because I was
Mhm.
all home alone. I had spent like the entire weekend basically playing this game, and it was basically fantastic up to that point.
Okay.
And there were a
Oh
couple
man.
colossi that I was kind of like, I don't like this one as much, and
Yeah.
that dog one really threw me off, and the eel one I probably had nightmares about that later. But
Ah.
oh my goodness, that one, it's like it broke the game for me. Like I look back on it, and that's what I remember, and I just feel like,
Yeah.
this game had so much promise, and it was so good up until this point, and it lost me completely. And
Until
I
the
just
end. Oh.
but it was such a big chunk of my playtime. It's like that ending lasted
Right.
forever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh man.
That's the
Yeah.
worst. And I'm sorry, Nate can't defend himself, so that's just definitively it. It is written down in
Right.
the backlog breakdown canon now. Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Is as high as it is on our list of best games of all time, it also has one of the worst bosses of all time. that's it. And funny enough, I went through a lot of these lists, okay? Because I felt like there's got to be some that I'm forgetting, and that's
Mhm.
why I had such a huge list too. Is because I felt like a lot of these needed to be mentioned as well. Um, no joke, I saw him on at least a couple of best of lists. That boss, just because it was talking about how epic it was to do that.
Mhm.
But no, I agree. It made it frustrating. It didn't break the game for me, but it was definitely, yeah, it was the most frustrating thing in the game for sure.
Mhm.
Um, I was trying to hold on, uh, just based on how much the atmosphere was trying to make you feel like there was a lot at stake. But yeah,
Right.
at a certain point, the immersion's just broken because there's really not much at stake when you fall down. It's just I have to do this again. Yeah, exactly.
Hate
And
wasting
it's
time.
slow.
Mhm.
It's slow to climb. It's slow to get back to where you were. And then the most frustrating thing is like halfway up, then you miss a jump. And then it's just like ah
Yeah.
yeah.
No, the worst thing is when you're right there at the top, right there at the top, and because you just hold on just one like millisecond too long, your guy goes flying down, and you're just like, I have to do this whole thing over again. Does anything that I do matter in this game?
Mhm.
I-
Yeah, that's true. The higher you are, like the closer you are to his head, generally the farther you'll fall. And so that makes it even worse. Man, oh man. Well, yeah, I don't want to belabor the point, but I see what you mean.
Yes. And I
I
cannot wait to hear his reaction to this.
yeah, his rage. You're the worst boss, Wes.
I hope he says that.
That's
Oh man.
awesome. All right. Well, this has been fun,
Mhm.
recounting all these bosses and making our own arguments. I'm sure there's some that we missed. If there are that stick out in your mind that we should have mentioned, well, one, we might not have played the game that you're thinking of, but two, we'd love to hear for your input, and tell us what we should know. There's tons of ways that you can get in contact with us on Twitter. Our handle is at @bbdowncast. You can email us at thebacklog@gmail.com. We have a group on Facebook, the hashtag Backlog Book Club. We're also on Discord if you want a link for that. And then, of course, there's all the personal ways that you can reach out. I generally go by Broccolope on the internet. It's spelled Broccoolope. And if you like what you hear, you can rate and review and subscribe and all the fun things. Share this episode with your friends. And we do also have a Patreon if you're interested in supporting us there. Um, Wes, how can they? I was about to call you Nate. That was weird. I've just done this 64 times before. Um, how can people get in touch with you, or do you want people getting in touch with you?
Well, first off, if your friends are big fans of Shadow of the Colossus, please don't share this episode with them. I have a weak constitution. I don't want to get beat up. Second of all, I am not nearly as handsome as that bearded man, Nate. But I thank you for the compliment. Thank you for the compliment. You can find me at the Henshin Dad podcast. I haven't done too many episodes recently just because work career stuff mixed with all this craziness happening in the world and my
Mhm.
schedule basically being changed on me week to week. I don't know what's going on anymore. So, I'm just like, oh, whatever. But I recently did a review on Ready Player 2, that beautiful
Mm-mm-mm.
tome. Honestly, it's an instant classic right there. You got, like I mentioned to Paul, you got To Kill a Mockingbird, you got The Great Gatsby, Ready Player 2. It
Yeah.
works. It slots right into the literary canon. But yes, you can find me at the Henshin Dad podcast. I talk about Tokusatsu, Ultraman. More Ultra Q talk is definitely going to happen because that show is great and everybody should go watch it. And it's free and it's in black and white. It's really cool looking. But yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me. And you can find me pretty much in all the same places that they're at. I follow them around. I'm kind of like the groupie, the really cool groupie that tries to move around all of
No.
their sound equipment and musical instruments and I like to say I'm with the band. I'm with the backlog breakdown.
Yeah, man, you are a part of the breakdown. What are you talking about? Here you are. No, and we both are a part of the Play Well Network.
Mm.
We have a lot of fun with that group. Um,
Get pwned.
get pwned. So,
Trying
you
to.
guys, till next time, you keep beating down your backlogs, and we'll keep breaking down the benefits. Sorry, patrons, I didn't have the final word pulled up. I do actually have a final word.
I was about to say we better put
I
that final
have
word
it.
in. Best one.
Yes. I just don't remember where. Oh yeah, yeah. It's in Facebook messages. That's where it is.
Mm.
Um. Oh man, this is so good. Do you off?
I can't. I can't do the best Nate impression.
Okay.
You got to
Okay.
do it.
Okay. Let me. Oh, that's right. Messenger is terrible on an actual computer.
Right. Yeah. Unless you go to
Like,
messenger.com.
oh really?
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
even
like
know
this
about
entire
that.
website just devoted to the messenger, and it's like all full screen and nice. It actually looks pretty good.
No, oh, that's cool. Yeah, it always just like freezes, and I'm like, I know it's not my computer because other tabs are loading just fine.
Mhm.
Dang Facebook. It intentionally is trying to push you towards your phone.
Right? Yeah.
Maybe I'm a little whatchamacallit, conspiracy theorist there, but I really do think it's geared. Um,
I'm full
for
conspiracy theorist, so I totally get it. That's why we
well,
have our own little miniature homestead here in the backyard.
nice. I dig it. Okay, here it is. And the final word goes to Mr. Nate_McKeever, who says, "Yeah, it rained all day, and I'm Justin wiped out at this pune. Might even go to bed early."
dot dot dot.
Stupid autocorrect.
uh, Classic.
Yes. Yeah. So patrons, that was a message on well, obviously you heard Facebook Messenger. That was him like explaining that he wasn't going to be on with us, and it was it was autocorrect.
The
Pune.
autocorrect definitely
Pune.
like lets you know. Yeah, he's had enough of this day. He
Right.
needed his
Yes.
rest.
Exactly. Like
Uh,
I honestly even still I have no idea what he was trying to say.
I'm not sure
I'm
either.
Justin wiped out at this pune. Oh, was it point? Maybe I'm just wiped
Maybe.
out at this point. Maybe. Might
Question is,
even
why
go
would
to
it
bed early.
autocorrect a pune? What does pune mean?
Right, exactly. And oh, that's the other thing is that so Justin, obviously it's a name, so it's capitalized.
Right.
Pune, Pune is capitalized as well.
That
So
was
like,
very
it just
confusing.
looks like the rantings of a madman.
Hey, he's a mailman. He deserves all the credit there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I totally get it.
In like super cold rain all day, like no, that
Oh
would
man.
suck.
Yeah.
I totally get it. It's no problem that he wasn't able. And actually, oh man, I should have said this on the episode proper. But this is the first episode that he hasn't been on. Like I've missed a
Oh,
couple episodes at this
yeah, I
point.
guess you're right.
This is the first full episode in as long as we've been doing this. Like Nate is a freaking trooper. So when he said like he wasn't able to come on tonight, like, oh, cool. Like,
Oh yeah.
it must be uh like he's not, it's not that he's not committed. It's that, something came up. And so like,
Yeah.
yeah, a day in the rain in what I assume is to be, 40-degree weather, could maybe even colder.
Hmm.
Freezing rain, walking around all day. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it sucks.
That
So,
would be miserable. As hard as it is being a teacher sometime, I realize I have a really cushy job.
mhm.
I have a very cushy job. I don't have to be out in the elements.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, man, I have nothing but respect for people who can work outside doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. Like when he talks about like walking what, like 12 miles a day, it's like, oh geez. Like,
I'm like, I'm lucky if I can get two on my
yeah.
Fitbit.
Oh man. Yeah, since we have the elliptical, like I can hit 12 in a day, but I am like, yeah, I'm wiped
Mhm.
out if I do. That's like an hour and a half on
Mhm.
there, something like that. Like I'm dead
Yeah.
for the rest of the day. And he does that every day, so that's
Yeah.
insane.
I remember reading in these like old like Oregon Trail-y type books where they're talking about how they basically have to walk 10 to 15 miles every single day. And I'm just like, oh man. He's basically just going back to that pioneer life.
Exactly. Yeah, hence the beard. Makes sense.
There you go. Yeah. And he wears plaid.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I did have to share this fortune cookie real quick from Panda
Okay.
Express. Okay, I
Ah,
got it the other day. It's very simple, straight and to the point. It says, "You have exquisite taste." That's it. And I was
nice.
like, "Thanks, Panda." And I don't know if you listened to the one that I did with Paul on the retro station, the fun fortune cookie that I had there. It
I
said
don't
something
think
like,
so.
You'll soon have a very like exciting and titillating experience."
Oh no.
I'm like, that's this podcast right here. Exciting and titillating at
That's
the retro
awesome.
station.
Oh man. No, I think I got like halfway through that. I didn't finish it.
Okay. I don't remember which one it was. Maybe it was the Worlds of Power one, I think. But
Okay.
yeah. So
Nice.
should I go
Nice.
ahead and stop my recording then?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can stop them.
I just remember like when we were doing one of the Persona ones where you matched up the audio. Like one of us kept recording way longer, so you're only hearing
Oh,
one side of the conversation, and
yeah.
I was like, "Oh, that was my fault. I ended too quickly."
No, it's no problem. So what I do now is so because Skype is recording,
Mhm.
I actually pull the audio from the video and that's matched up. So then I put all the tracks together. I mute all the tracks except the one that's everyone, and then whatever I want to line up, and then I just align them all to that Skype track.
Oh, nice.
And so yeah, so that helps a lot.
Mhm.
That's been my process since we found out that we could record on Skype.
That's cool.
That's fun.
I am saving the Audacity
Yeah.
project right now.
Okay.
I'm going to export it as a wave.
Whew.
It's going to be a
It is.
3 GB file.
Yeah, we that's right. We didn't take any breaks with the recording, so sorry.
No, that's
Shoot.
fine. It says it should only take a couple minutes.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
I'm thinking of like uploading too. Also, it's much later than I thought. Sorry for
oh no,
I'm bad at being good at brevity.
I was just as bad. Don't worry. I was like, well, this is the one time I could probably record and actually get on like all parts of the program this time. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
Let's do it.
let's
Hey, it's
go for
just
broke.